So hello everyone, and thanks for joining me today for this webinar on regression analysis and curve fitting in FCS Express 7. I want to go straight to the agenda. So what we will see today, this is the summary. So first of all, what's a regression analysis and what's a scatter width regression plot in FCS Express? We will see specifically the different type of data that you can deal with the regression plot. And namely, you will see that you can perform regression analysis using custom data, so data that you can add to a spreadsheet, to an integrated spreadsheet. You can use a file from your flow cytometry experiment, or ideally from any type of experiment, and this is because we can deal with both FCS and CSV file. And also, I will show you that you can deal with regression analysis also if we are dealing with high throughput screening assay, so plate-based data file. And this is actually easy to do because we have a tool in FCS Express, which is the plate heat map, and you will see an example that really make your life easier when dealing with plate-based experiment. You will see that we do integrate a lot of different types of regression, so like linear, exponential, Michaelis-Menten, sigmoidal, and all the stuff. You can easily change the fitting properties of those regression model. You can also change the formatting option of the regression plots itself. So if you are able to use FCS Express, you know that we include really a lot of formatting capability to customize your plots. And a regression plots are really similar to any other plot with this regard. So you will see you'll be able to change the axis, the title, the background, and all the little tiny detail about the data that you are plotting in those plots. And last but not least, we will see how you can retrieve actual values out from your regression, like coefficients, and also how you can batch processing with regression plot. Okay, so the first thing that I want to deal with is the definition of regression analysis. As you can see here, regression analysis is a set of statistical processes that allows you to estimate the relationship between a variable called dependent variable, which is usually the y, and one or even, ideally, even multiple independent variables that are usually called like predictors, covariate, or if you're just one, it's usually the x. Why it's so important and it's so useful to know the relationship between x and y? Well, because once you know the relationship, you can then estimate an unknown y, for example, if you know the value of the x variable. And here are just few examples of different relationship. You can see here in the top left, we have a linear regression. We have parabolic regression here, a cubic regression, and also sigmoidal. But there are really tons of different type of relationship between variables. So as I was mentioning before, I put together some example of regression analysis in FCS Express. The first example of regression that I want to show you is with custom data created in a spreadsheet. And so let me open my first layout here. This is a real example, let's say a real experiment. It's a titration. You see here I have in my data list 6 different files, 6 dilutions. So this is a titration for a CD3 experiment, goes from from 0.3 microliter to 20 microliter. Here I have my 6 data files opened in 6 different plots. Just to show you that, for example, as you can see here, the intensity of the CD3 is increasing if you go left to right. And what I want to do is to create a regression using the integrated spreadsheet with this data. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to insert a spreadsheet. And you can go here in the Insert tab of the ribbon bar and select Spreadsheet New. As you can see here, you can type a name. I will just say titration data. You can actually also keep the default name if you want, but I think it's useful. I will click OK, and you see this is the spreadsheet. So I will not spend too much time describing all the features integrated with this spreadsheet. We have really a lot of stuff. Just want to mention that we have here 2 tabs that allows you to customize the content and to insert formula. And I'm not going into much detail because we have a webinar dedicated to this. So what I'm going to do now is to populate this spreadsheet with some data of interest. And in this case, what I want to do is to have a column containing like the concentration, or let's say the amount of antibody, if we want to be more general, amount of CD3 antibody. And we want another column with the MFI. And in this case can be, for example, the median. So if you want to populate this spreadsheet in FCS Express, it's really, really easy. So what I'm going to do is to select the data in the data list, drag and drop them into any cells of the spreadsheet, in this case A2. And in this case, I'm going to retrieve a keywords. So here I want to add the 0.3, 1.25, 2.5. So if you have a keywords containing those value, you don't need to manually type those value into the spreadsheet. And in my data, I have a keywords with this information. So this is why I'm going to insert a keywords. This is the full list of keywords in those data. And if I scroll down, I can see a keyword, which is in this case called concentration. And I'm going to click OK. And those are the keywords. So you see, if you have a lot of files and you have a keywords in them, it's much easier to drag and drop and select the keywords instead of typing. And then I'm going to have here in the second column, I'm going to display a statistic, which is anything you want, but in this case, with this experiment, it will be like the median of the CD3 FITC of the positive population. And FCS Express is going to calculate this for all my sample, all the sample that I have selected and dragged and dropped. And you see here that I have my 2 columns. So basically, this will be the X and this will be the Y of my regression. I can make my spreadsheet a little bit smarter. For example, if you right click and you select format, in this category, spreadsheet data, you can check this checkbox, use value in the first row as labels. This means that as soon as you will create a plot, and we are going to create a regression plot, these 2 labels will be used to label the axis on that plot. Otherwise, you will just see A and B, so the header of the column, but in this case, it's much easier to see these 2 labels. Now I'm going to open my regression plot. So here is how to actually create a regression plot. So just go to the Insert tab, the same tab that we use to insert the spreadsheet, and let's select regression, scatter with regression. I'm going to draw it. And you see that the scatter with regression is plotting on the x-axis the first column. Let me increase a bit the zoom. You see on the x-axis, you have the first column, which is the amount of CD3 antibodies, so the text that we added here. And you see it's live updating. So if we say here concentration, now you see that the x-axis label updates automatically. And this is because we check that checkbox, so to use the first row as label. And on the y-axis, you see the second column. If you want to do the opposite, just click on the x or y-axis and select a different column from the spreadsheet. So you see this is the same thing that you do on standard plot when you want to change the parameter. So there is nothing to be scared about by this scatter with regression plot. They behave like normal plot. And now you see that I have these 6 dots here. and I have a regression. So you see, since we selected scatter with regression, a regression is automatically added to this scatter plot. So what I want to mention is that, as you can see in this case, this regression is by default a linear regression. But actually, there are many types of regression, and it's very easy to switch to a different type by formatting this plot. And this is the first formatting option that I want to mention about scatter with regression plot. So we will see that you can really customize this plot as much as you want. It's like you can change the title, you can change the axis, scale, you can add the legend. In this case, I want to change the regression type. So I'm going to click on this plot, and then I'm going to format. And you see here at the right, we have regression fit. You see we have just one regression. It says linear regression. And I can change between any of those 19 types of regression. You see we have like parabolic, cubic, Boltzmann, Gaussian, and let's say that we want like a 5-parameter logistic. So this is the first formatting option that I want to mention, okay? Changing the regression type by going to regression fit here, or by clicking on this button and select the regression that you want from this drop-down menu. The coefficient that you see here are the coefficient of this function. This is a 5-parameter logistic. And what I want to mention is that if you want, you can fix one of them. So you can put constraints. So for example, let's say that you want to change the minimum and you want the minimum to be fixed to 200 instead of 82. Okay, you can type here 200. And now you see, for example, you can see here that the minimum, it's now going to 200. If you remove this, like if you clean these cells, now all the regression is again automatic, and all the value are automatically calculated. I also want to mention this option, number of regression dots. Actually, you see this red line, so the regression curve can be smoothed. So if you lower this number, like let's say 3, you see now it's basically 2 segments, so 3 dots. If you increase it, it will be more smooth. And usually it's nicer if you keep it at 30, but just know that you can play with that if you want. Here you see in this dialog, we also have the ability to add a new regression on the same scatter plot. So if you click on add, now a second regression is automatically added. By default, it's still linear. Now you see it's blue. And for example, this is very simple. You see you have the slope, you have the intercept, and then you have the R-square. And you can change it. Let's say, I don't know, sigmoidal. And now I have 2 regressions. And I can add as many regression as you want. And again, you can play with the coefficient, you can play with the smoothing. So you see, the power of this is that you can perform the regression analysis inside FCS Express with your data without relying on external software. And it's very easy to do. I mean, it's really user-friendly. And the advantage of this is that now, let's say that I want to adjust my gate. So I'm going to move this gate, so the sales gate. And please have a look at the number in the spreadsheet, have a look at the plot at the top, have a look at my regression plot. They will all update in real time as soon as I move my gate. So think about doing this with any other software. Every time that you move or adjust a gate, you will have to re-export your data to Excel or GraphPad or whatever, recalculate the regression every time. While in this case, it's basically immediate. So what I want to show you now are few other customizations. So now that you know how to create the scatter plot. First customization is the title. Again, you can select the plots, you can click on title in the formatting tab of the ribbon bar, or you can just scroll here and select title. And maybe you can just add some custom name and say, this is my first regression plot. Another cool things that you can do is here in the axis category, you can change the scale. So for example, the x-axis on this plot, maybe you want to display it in log scale. Now you see it's log scale. So it's very easy. I'm not doing anything complex. And this is the beauty of FCS Express. Last but not least, you can add a legend. Now that we have multiple regression, it may be useful. So I will go to legend. You see here you have different option. I will just play a little bit with this one, the position. So I will put it at the bottom and I will make it visible. And now you see that I have black data set here, which is called titration data. It's the same name of the spreadsheet. Remember when we created the spreadsheet, we typed in titration data as a title. Then we have two regression, the red and the blue. First one is a 5-parameter logistic, and the second one is a sigmoidal. So this is the basic. So we saw how to populate the spreadsheet. So this is the X, this is the Y, and we saw how to create the scatter plot. How can you retrieve data, I mean actual numbers, out of your scatter with regression? Well, the easiest way to retrieve numbers like coefficient, remember here you can see the coefficient of your regression, but maybe you want to report them within the layout, not just in the regression feed dialog. And it's really easy. So the first thing that I want to show you is that right click on the scatter plot, select statistic, and select regression parameter statistics. And now you see you have this pretty nice text box. We have two regression here, regression 1, regression 2, and we have all the coefficients. However, if you want to do something more, let's say, simple, you can also add some custom coefficient to any text box you want, or also in the spreadsheet. So let's say that the IC50 is, and now I want to report here the IC50 for the regression 1, okay? The easiest way is to drag and drop my regression plot and drop it here into the text box, right at the right of my text, okay? And what I want to add, what I want to retrieve from my plot is a statistic token. So here, instead of 2D statistic, which is usually what you select on a standard plot, I'm going to select regression parameter statistics. You see here I can grab statistic from all the regression available on that plot. I'm going to select 5-parameter logistic, which is the first regression, and I'm going to retrieve the IC50. And again, both this text box and this text box are live updating. So if I move my gate, let me bring it here. If I move my gate, you will see that all those numbers update in real time. Again, think about doing this without FCS Express. So this is the first thing that you can do. So report the coefficient of your regression. Like maybe you want to report the R-square or whatever. And also something very cool is that if you drag and drop a text box inside the plot, you see now if you move the plot, the text box will be included. And it will still be live updating, you see here. So this is very convenient if you want to put together a nice picture, maybe for a poster or for a presentation. Now, one of the beauty of the regression is that once you know which is the function, which is the relationship that relate the two variable, okay? So here basically we are relating an x with a y, okay? So the x variable on the x-axis is the independent variable, and then you have a dependent variable which is on y-axis. So once you know the relationship, like linear or 5-parameter logistic, what you can do is, if you start with a given x, you can calculate, estimate the y. Or you can also do the opposite. So if you know the y, you can estimate the x. And I want to show you an example. So let's say this is my new spreadsheet, and here, this is the y. So let's say that I have target MFI, and the question is how much CD3 antibody I need to achieve a given target MFI. So you see the MFI now, it's going between like 90 to 500. Let's say that I want to calculate the amount of CD3 antibody that I need to reach 400 as intensity of the CD3 population. Okay? So this is the estimate of the amount of antibody. I want to calculate this. So basically, we know the y, and the y, it's something around here. And we want to calculate the x. If you look at the number that we have here, you can already appreciate that the amount of antibody will be between 5 and 10. But we don't know. We don't know if it's 6, if it's 7, if it's 9. So only by regressing these two variables, we'll be able to do that. And in FCS Express, you can easily do that by using one of the formula that we have here in the spreadsheet formula tab. So if you scroll down, you will see that we have two formula called regression plot x to y. This is when you know the x and you want to calculate the y, or y to x. This is the opposite. So this is what we need. So we want to go from a given y, which is 400 MFI, to an unknown x. Now, we need three information here in these parentheses. First one, which is the regression that we want to use. And basically, this is defined by telling FCS Express which is the regression plot and which is the overlay that we want to refer. And the third information is which is the x. And in this case, the x is cell B2. Now, why I know this? Because this is written in the manual. So I just want to mention that if you don't know how to use some formula in the spreadsheet, you can just navigate on our manual. And let me see if I can open it here. Yeah. So this is the manual of FCS Express. You can grab it from the software, from within FCS Express. You can also grab it from the website. And if you navigate here, plots and other object, spreadsheet chart, and you see here spreadsheet formula definition, which is this page. So it's a long page. We have all the formula described here. And what I want to do is to go to the statistical function and then go down until we see regression. And here we are. So this is the formula that I'm using, regression plot y to x. This is the formula, and those are the three information that I need to retrieve. So you see plot number, overlay number, and the y known value. And this is the information that we're going to type here in these parentheses. So the plot number, it's very easy. Just unselect all the object that you have, just click outside the object and then move your mouse on the regression plot. And you see this is plot number 19. Let me do it again. You see number 19. So the first number that we want to type here is 19. Then, which is the overlay that we want to refer to? So you can easily look at this and find this by looking at the overlay formatting option. You see the first overlay, it's the actual data, so the black dots. The second overlay is the 5-parameter logistic, and this is what we want to use. So the second number here will be number 2. And the third information will be cell B2, because cell B2 contains the target, so the known Y value. And you see it's 7.9. And it's indeed between 5 and 10. So it means that with 7.9 microliter you will achieve a median intensity for the CD3 FITC of 400. And again, if you move your gate, that calculation will update as well. You see, it's live updating. So this is the power of FCS Express. I also want to mention that what we have done so far, in this case, is just for one data set. You see here I have just 6 files in my data list. So one titration experiment. But if you have multiple experiments, you can do batch analysis. And this is, for example, what you can do in this layout. In this layout, I have 2 pages. So you see I have 7 plots, 7 dilution. I have few gates. I have my spreadsheet with the concentration, with the MFI. I have my regression, and here I have estimated the concentration of interest. But as compared to what we did before, in this case, I have 2 data sets. So what you see on the screen now is just data set 1, which is one titration experiment. I can analyze the second data set by simply loading it into my layout. I don't need to recreate all the plots, all the gates, all the scatter, all the regression. I just load the second layout. And now you see that all my data updates immediately. And if I go back, they will update again. And this is good because this is compatible with batch processing. So you may know batch processing. If you're more let's say if you are interested in this, we have multiple webinars on batch processing, but basically it's a way to export your analysis and your results to different file formats. You see here, you can export to PowerPoint, to PDF, to picture, to Excel, to Word, to CSV. In this case, I will do something very easy, exporting to PDF. And when I'm ready, I will just click on Run. And now FCS Express will export my analysis to PDF for my 2 datasets. And if you have 100 datasets, that will be the same. In this case, this is my PDF. You see, I have 2 pages per dataset. This is page 1. If I scroll down, this is page 2 for dataset 1. And then this is the second dataset. So different numbers, different regression, different concentration. So think about what you want to do here is just retrieving a single number, okay? And if you're not using FCS Express, and if you want to retrieve this number, you will have to go through multiple steps of like copy and pasting, exporting, opening Excel, doing the calculation, go to GraphPad, and this will be really time consuming. While in FCS Express, it's really fast and easy to do. So this was the first example. So by using the integrated spreadsheet and perform regression analysis with value in the spreadsheet. But I also mentioned that you can use FCS file or CSV file. And this is why I want to open this other example here. It's a blank layout, but you see here in my data list, I have FCS file. If you want to load CSV file, that's super easy. When you open here the Add Data File dialog, instead of selecting FCS file, just select comma separated value, and you will be able to load your CSV file. So what I'm going to do is opening first file, and I want to open a density plot or a color dot plot just to show you that this is a standard FCS file. And then I will open a scatter with a regression plot. So again, in this case, I'm not regressing the content of the spreadsheet. I'm regressing all the value inside my file. And you see, I can change this to any parameter I want. So this is my density plot. I can change to any fluorescence, and I can do the same here. So for example, this is FL2 and this is FL1. Okay. This allows me to show you a couple of more customization. So we already saw that you can customize, for example, the axis scale, the title, the legend. Let me also show you, since we have a lot of data here, let me also show you this. If you go to overlay, you see here you have two data set again, two overlay. The first one are the black dots and the second one is the linear regression. So for example, I can reduce the dot size, you see, and maybe if I want to make the linear regression more visible, I can increase the size of the line, like 4. So those are other two options that you see here we have much more. What I want to show you with this example is that you can use gate with regression plot. What you can do is either creating a gate on a standard plot and then apply it to the regression just by dragging and dropping, as you usually do with standard plot. And you see that the regression updates in real time. Or you can also do the opposite. So let me delete this gate. Let's say that you have another scatter plot here, another scatter with regression. You can also create a gate on this plot. And then you can apply it to the first scatter plot or also to the density plot. So you see, you can draw a gate on a standard plot and apply it to the scatter or vice versa. And again, gates are all live updating. So this is, for example, useful if you want to remove some outlier, like in this case. If you want to get rid of those events here at the left and at the bottom, you can just create a gate that doesn't include them and then use the gate. So at the end, you will work with this scatter plot in the center, and you will be able to do all the things that we saw before, like retrieving the coefficient or making some calculation using the spreadsheet. Make sense? If you have any question, just type in. I didn't mention that today we have Rafael online, one of our specialists, so he can take care of your question in real time while you are attending this webinar. Okay, I can now show you the last example in my in this webinar. So let me close this and let me move to this other example. So this is an example of high content data analysis. You see, this is a multi-well plate. It's a 96-well plate, and it's also an example of image data analysis. As you can see here at the right, I have pictures of my cells. So this is just to remember you that FCS Express can deal with both flow and image cytometry data analysis. And on top of that, that regression can work with flow and image data and also with plate-based experiment. In this experiment, this was the scheme of my plate. So this is just a picture. I just added it into FCS Express. You see here, you can go to insert, add pictures. This is really easy, useful to keep track of the plate scheme. And you can see, for example, that in the first column, I have some negative and positive control. In the 12th column, I again have some positive and negative control. And then in the center of my plate, you see here column 3 to 11, I have increasing concentration of two compounds. Let's say the light blue and the yellow compounds. And each concentration for each compound is has been plated in quadruplicates. So what I've done here was, first, I have created two gates, including multiple well. One to gate the positive control. And you see here I have 4 and 4 red wells. This is the positive control gate. And I did the same with the negative. So this is negative, and this is our other 4 wells of the negative. So I have 8 replicates for each of them. Why that? Because I wanted to create my gates of interest, like basically responder and not responder, by looking at either the negative control and the positive control. And the idea is that while the compound is added with increasing concentration, the responder cell should increase. And you see that, for example, in this positive control, I have 98% of responder cells, while the baseline it's around like 50% here. So the population of interest in this case is the responder cells. And in the second page, what I've done was to retrieve all the percentage of responder cells from all the wells in my plate. You see, this is my 96 well plates. Those are the negative, those are the positive, those are the 4 rows for compounds light blue, and those are the 4 rows for compounds, the yellow compound. And thanks to the spreadsheet, I've here created few more columns with the concentration, and here you see I calculated the average of my replicate. So this is the average of D2, 3, 4, and 5, which is the lower concentration of the light blue compound. It's this one, 0.977. So now that I have my data into column, I want to create my regression plot. And again, it's very easy. Just click on regression, draw it, and then select which column you want to plot. And for example, I want like concentration drug 2 versus concentration, percentage of responder cells for drug 2. As we did before, I just want to reiterate, you can go to the axis and maybe you want to change the scale of the X and logarithmic. And you see by default, this is linear scale, as we saw in the previous example. And maybe you want to change it. You see it's not really appropriate in this case. So for example, what I can do is to select like sigmoidal, or maybe I want to add and select a 4-parameter logistic, or maybe I want to add another one and select a 5-parameter logistic. You see they're pretty simple in this, they're pretty similar in this case. And I don't want to mention, but I will do, you see, if I move my gate, let me scroll, if I move my responder gate, you see all the layouts updates immediately, okay? All the regression updates immediately in real time. So this is the beauty of FCS Express. And I also want to show you 2 other things. So for example, if you want to remove one of your replicates, you can, for example, go here into the spreadsheet and just delete 1 cell. And you see that the average updates, let me undo. So have a look at this part of my regression plot. If I undo, you see it's slightly changing because I'm affecting the average. So basically I'm dealing with this number. Or you can also completely remove one of those. Like if I remove the 73, oh, sorry, I'm dealing with the yellow one. If I'm removing the 74, now I have one missing dot. And if I undo, you see it's changing. Or you can also do that, so removing outlier by creating gates as we saw before. So for example, I can create a gate here around these dots and say exclude. And then I can apply this gate on top of this scatter plot. And you see, basically, I'm excluding the dots one by one. So this is very convenient if you want to exclude outlier, because gates are something that we are dealing with every day, so they are pretty intuitive. So again, I'm not going to open all the statistics, but you already know you can just right click and select statistic here, regression parameter statistic. You can open another spreadsheet and maybe calculate an unknown Y starting with a given X or vice versa. So this is what FCS Express allows you to do in terms of regression analysis. Let me just go back to my initial layout, and I want to summarize a little bit what we have seen since the beginning. So FCS Express integrate regression analysis using a plot that we call scatter with regression plot. So it's the one that you can find here in the insert tab, scatter with regression. So it's really, if you are a bit with FCS Express, if you know how to open a density plot, how to open a color dot plot, there is nothing to be scared about in this case. It's just a different plot type. It's still a plot in which you can change the axis, you can change the title, you can customize any tiny details. The scatter with regression plot, it's compatible with either FCS file, CSV file. You can also do regression by using the content of the spreadsheet. Again, the spreadsheet is the one that you can open here from the insert tab of the ribbon bar. And all the calculation, all the models, all the coefficient are all live updating. So if your spreadsheet is based on some gates or on a specific data set, once you change the data set or when you move a gate, everything will update in real time. So this is really the advantage of using FCS Express with these regards. You can also display multiple models within the same scatter plot with regression. So as we did in the last example, where we added 3 different type of regression in the same plot. And last but not least, as we saw at the beginning with the second example, you can batch process. So if you create a very complex template in which you have all your data, all the regression, and maybe you want to export a single number out of your layout, and you want to do this on hundreds of samples, you don't need to recreate that layout hundreds of times. You will just batch process and you will export the final result. The final results can be a PDF, a PowerPoint, an Excel, or whatever. So at the Novo software, we really want to make your life easier. We want to help you in automating your workflow, which is always good in terms of time saving and also in, let's say, reducing the opportunity for error. So I will not take too much of your time. I just want to mention, if you have any question, just contact us at support@thenovosoftware.com. And if you haven't tried FCS Express before, if you navigate on our website, you can easily download the 30-day trial version. It's fully compatible. It's fully functional, meaning that it includes all the features and all the add-ons. So it also includes like the image features. It includes the plate, heat map, and of course it includes the scatter with regression, which is something that is available with all our version. Okay. Many thanks again for attending the webinar, and keep in touch for new webinar and new features that we will release in the next future.